Welcome to the Understanding Boys podcast. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which this podcast is recorded, the Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and we pay our respects to their leaders past, present and emerging. The Understanding Boys podcast is a series of conversations exploring what it is to be a good man these days. And if you had a story that you could tell a boy of, say, 14 and he'd listen, what would that story be? And that's really what I'm asking our guests today. I'm Dr. Ray Swan, and we're a community of teachers and parents concerned with the education and growth of boys and young men in the modern world. This series is brought to you by Brighton Grammar, an all-boys school in Melbourne. To learn more about the podcast, please visit understandingboys.com.au. In today's podcast, we speak with James Tomkins, OAM. James was an Olympic oarsman, a 7-time world champion. In fact, he's probably one of our best ever known athletes. He's in the Australian Sports Hall of Fame. His list of accolades goes on and on. In our conversation, we talk a little bit about, well, what did elite sport teach him? How does he apply it now? How does he think about mental health? What is he learning about being a parent? I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I enjoyed recording it. So joining us today on the Understanding Boys podcast is James Tomkins. James, thanks very much in advance for your time today. Where do we find you right now? In lockdown in Melbourne or elsewhere?
Yes, lockdown in Melbourne. And good morning, Ray. Yeah, lockdown in Melbourne. So fingers crossed a couple more days. Yeah,
that's right. We're looking at the cases, and we're all looking at R values and everything else, becoming armchair experts, I think, in global and certainly national health. One of the things I was really hoping to chat to you today a little bit about is obviously your career in elite sport, how you think about goal setting and your time in the boat and what it taught you. I guess a good place as any to start is, what are some of the lessons that you learned in elite sport and are any of them you're still applying in your day-to-day these days?
Yes, the answer is yes, they still apply. And yes, I've learned a lot of things along the way. I think I was very fortunate to be involved in a team sport. And I think rowing is probably the ultimate team sport. Like in football or netball or basketball, you can have people out on the wings that maybe aren't playing that well, but the team will still win. But in rowing, like, everyone has to be absolutely spot on. So, and humans are communal people. We like being around other people. So in a very high pressure, high intensity pursuit of rowing at the elite level, you learn to deal with other people and learn to work with other people in pretty extraordinary circumstances. And I think, if you can do that, then that stands you in pretty good stead. So those sorts of things of being involved in that sort of environment, I think, is really important as far as dealing with other people, but also the whole notion of, where you are now and where you want to get to and how you actually do that and what sort of things you have to put in place to get there. So all that sort of stuff is things that still apply today and still have meaning.
And that, I guess, when as an elite athlete, I guess you have a team around you that's very much focused on an outcome and a process. These days in your work, do you sort of think about that? And I guess you can be quite single-minded as an athlete, and there's probably a little bit more in life, and in work, a few more variables, a few more things going on that aren't actually as controllable as they might be. When you're really trying, really looking at each second.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're in that sporting environment, everyone around you is 100%. Work, school, a club, sporting environment. Maybe not everyone is 100%. So you're starting off at a pretty good level. But I think a lot of people get caught up. Well, the thing that I learned the most as far as goal setting is that a lot of people get caught up with the end result, and they just get fixated by that. And they completely forget about what they have to do to actually get there. Most people stuff themselves up. They're so concentrating on that end result. We had this mantra of process equals outcome. If you do the processes as well as you possibly can, and they're really good processes, do them as well as you possibly can, like 9 times out of 10, the outcome will take care of itself. You don't have to worry about the outcome. You just keep doing the things that are going to you got to work out what's going to drive that outcome and then concentrate on those as opposed to the outcome. And I think that's really critical. And I think a lot of people get caught up in that end result.
It's a good place to jump into, actually. And I did want to talk to you a bit about your thinking around goals and goal setting and reviewing and jumping into things like, the role of outcome versus process. I mean, for you, someone who's received, an OAM, Australian Sports Hall of Fame, World Championships, you've stood on the Olympic dais and received medals. How much of that was motivating to you to get to that point? Or were there other things, at play in the way that you think about goals, particularly after you'd had some early success? What was it that, motivated you after spending, as I understand, some time out of the boat to get back in the boat, to do it again?
Yeah, well, I was never one, watching old footage of Olympic Games, or I was never one like, I want to be that person. Mm. For me, it was really personal. I just like to do things as well as I possibly can and just try to maximise. So I actually didn't enjoy the racing per se. I actually really enjoyed the preparation.
Right.
So it was a really personal challenge for me to maximise my levels, but then that gets or the evidence of that, I guess, is in competition, which I actually didn't like that bit. I liked the preparation. I didn't like having to test myself. I liked knowing that I was really good. I didn't like having to prove it. So.
I like that idea too. I like the idea that I am really good, but then unfortunately life does require me to.
Yeah, that's right.
It does sort of have these tests every now and again. So like when you think about that as for anyone that's been, at an amateur level or any level in rowing, the idea that training is actually fun is, that's the bit that you enjoy. I mean, you must have been a fairly unique breed in that. Anyone that's been on a Concept 2 rowing ergometer, for instance, might be thinking, crikey, how did you enjoy that?
Well, Ray, the reason why we did enjoy it, we didn't spend much time on the ergos. Okay. That's why. So. But I mean, we could come off the water from a training session and say, an hour and a half training session, and we could say at the 800 metre mark on the Yarra, there were 2 strokes there that were perfect. Mm-hmm. And we want to do 3 of those next time. And just so be able to identify really get down to that minutiae of that is what we're looking for. Yeah, it's just, I guess it's a personal challenge. And when you're in a crew, a group challenge of trying to be perfect. Mm. And, you don't often try and do that. Yeah, you don't ever achieve it for starters, but you don't often get the chance to try and achieve it. But you listen to people that have been around the sport, the elite level for a long period of time, Kelly Slater, the current crop of tennis players that are, Djokovic, Nadal, Federer. I think for them, it's not the titles, it's the personal challenge. Or Kelly Slater, I've heard him talk about it, and it's, he wants to do the perfect bottom turn and the perfect whatever it is down the line. And it's just a very personal thing for them. If they do it really well, outcome takes care of itself. But it's that constant striving. It's a bit of Buddhism, Ray, that constant evolution, constant improvement, which you can apply to every aspect of life, of course.
Yeah, like an asymptote, I suppose. You never quite get to that finer point of the curve. And I guess in rowing, there's 2 parts. There's the parts that you can control, and then there's the part in which you're relying on others, to also achieve that, because, as you're describing in rowing and building that sense of cohesion, and you've got those two strokes out of an hour and a half, so 2 sort of moments out of such a broad period where you've made a contribution, but you're also really relying on the others around you to, I guess, step into that goal, that shared goal as well.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You've got to have a collective mindset for sure. I remember my first World Championship win, or our first championship win, and Brighton Grammar Boy was in the crew. The nucleus of the Oarsome Foursome was in that crew as well. And yeah, like I used to get so wound up before events, so nervous. And our coach said beforehand, like he just said, no, just try and relax. Like whatever happens, win, lose or draw, we are going to stick together. We'll have beer afterwards and we'll discuss it, celebrate it, commiserate, but we will stick together. And you're not out here on your own. You've got sitting behind you, he's got your back, you've got this guy's back in front of you. We're all in this together and you've got the shared responsibility. And as soon as he said that, it was like just the lifting of pressure. It was like it's not all just me. I've got these other group of guys around me who are we're all trying to help each other go as well as we possibly can. And when you get that sort of environment where I'm saying, what can I do and how can I row in such a way that will allow my teammate to perform at their absolute best? Like, what do I do to help them? That's the ultimate team. When you get to that point, zero self-interest. Self-interest ruins teams, absolutely. So the more you can do for your teammate, the less self-interest, the better the team.
So we're chatting here around this idea of goals and goal setting and talking about what's meaningful and building cohesion and team and sacrifice for others and focusing on process more so than outcome. I read recently that you were talking about, and I know that you've done other things now since rowing. You've done other sports and thrown your hat in the ring in a few other ventures. And you made the comment that it's important to have something significant outside of normal life to aim for. Why is that significant? Why is it important to have something outside of normal life to aim for?
Well, I think it's important. I don't know that it's important. Okay. It's important for me because I'm cursed, Ray. I'm cursed for the rest of my life. I have to try and challenge myself to do something.
Right.
But I do think it's important that, life is pretty linear. Generally, it's pretty linear. You just do the same things over and over again. So I think it's really important to extend yourself. And it's not going for a 2-kilometre fun run. Mm-hmm. It's something you actually, I think everyone needs something that they need to actually commit some time to and develop some skills and go through that process of improving in some aspect. Now, it might be learning to play the guitar. It might be learning a language, or it might be doing something completely out of your comfort zone sporting wise, but something where you actually go, no, here's my life here. I go to school, or I go to work, and I've got family and do all that sort of stuff. But there's just this little bit over here just for me, just to test myself, to improve myself, and to have a goal at the end of whatever period of time to try and achieve. Now, you don't have to go and break world records, but just something to do. I want to be able to speak German fluently in a couple of years' time, or play the guitar at a reasonable level, or go and run a marathon or something or other. But something, and I think it's so good, the process of going through that, of nutting it all out, the logistics, the planning, the processes that you've got to put in place, like that's quite therapeutic. But then also when you go and do it, like it's a tick, and it's like, wow, okay, done that. What's next? And it's just this constant, come back to that Buddhism approach, that constant evolution, constant improvement. I just think it's really important to be really balanced and have a whole bunch of things going on in your life, and to be busy and to keep the mind active and to challenge the body as well.
Yeah, I guess what I'm hearing really clearly is that idea around challenge. I remember someone else saying to me a few years ago, do something every day that makes yourself a little bit uncomfortable in a way, like that you're being, I guess you're challenging, your sense of self and who you are and your capabilities. And, there's nothing quite like a feedback loop when you're a novice at something, is there? You sort of, decide I'm going to pick up some roller skates or some rollerblades or a skateboard or whatever you haven't done, and actually just take yourself through that process. And again, you're talking about Buddhism. I guess it's the beginner's mind idea, isn't it? Where you're learning something again for the first time, and what a beautiful way it is to see the world when you put into a situation like that and stick with something, long enough that you can actually make progress and see actual change in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when I finished rowing, didn't want to do much more of that. So what do I, try and find other things to do. And whether it's a big bike ride or do an Ironman or something. For me, it's physical stuff. It wasn't music and languages. Maybe I'll get there. I don't know. It could be next, but for me, it's the physical stuff. But, I know how to run. I know how to ride a bike. So what I'm doing at the moment is learning how to kayak or ocean surf ski, and there's a big race in Hawaii.
So go forwards rather than backwards. Exactly.
But it is apart from being in a boat on water, that's the only similarity to rowing. Like it's that novice, complete beginner. And, I've introduced it to quite a few other rowers and elite rowers, and they are loving it as well, just because it's a physical challenge. But the mental challenge is the biggest thing that everyone's getting out of it, is like this rank beginner again and trying to nut it out. If I do this, what happens? Oh, that's bad. If I do this, oh, that's better. Just going through that whole exploration. And it's play, and you learn through play and you learn through doing things. And it's just like being a child again, of just picking up something brand new and being a complete novice at it, and big ticks along the way, which is fantastic for yourself, for your self-esteem, and for your sense of, wow, I was an elite athlete, and I did, we were measured so much, and you were just constantly trying to get those little improvements. I really miss that. And to find something new where you're going through that same process where, I actually achieved that. I improved. It's, I think it's really good for everyone's self-esteem if they can go and find something that they're interested in. It's going to be a challenge, and have a crack at it. But having said all of that, Ray, once you get to the age of 45, your PBs reset to zero every year because you can go down the rabbit hole of trying to chase your tail and get faster and faster. And you get to a point where, you know what, you're actually not going to get faster or better or whatever. So you just got to be realistic.
So humility plays a role. Very good. So just the last thing I really wanted to touch on around goals and goal setting was, the distinct yet, I guess that they interplay, discipline and motivation. And, a lot of what you spoke about is really motivating. It's the fun. It's, getting the feedback and the change and seeing progress. But certainly over time, there's the quality of having to be disciplined, getting up and taking it's cold and it's rainy and it's whatever, it's a bit choppy out in the bay or wherever you're kayaking. And what have you learned about, discipline and that you might be able to share? What are your thoughts around that?
Well, again, coming from a team sport, discipline is in one hand, it's easier because, if I don't turn up to training, there's no training. So there's an obligation to your teammates. But there's also that, and then on the personal level, there's that obligation to yourself. Like if you don't get up and do something, you aren't going to improve and achieve what you're trying to do. So, you just have to make quick decisions. Don't dwell. If it's hard and you're vacillating around it, make a quick, good decision. You know what the right decision is. Yeah. Like everyone knows what the right decision is. Just make it.
Yeah.
Just make that decision. Don't, if I do this, I do that, yada, yada. I mean, I'll give you an example, Ray. You know what the weather's like at the moment. It's pretty miserable. June in Melbourne. And my wife, last year during lockdown, we started swimming in the bay with wetsuits.
Right.
And there's a bunch of people that go down into the bay, and these guys they've got I think it's the Wim Hof.
Yeah.
Yeah, that cold immersion thing. Anyway, I was going down swimming in a wetsuit with these guys. And it's like, well, why not? Why not just go out in bathers and see what it's like? Anyway, so I did it. Feels fantastic after a while. But it's like, okay, well, that's what I'm going to do now. Like, I actually don't need a wetsuit. Just start swimming straight away. Yeah, sure, it's cold, but it's pretty invigorating.
Yeah.
And, tossing up, will I go and do it or not? Well, I really enjoy it when I do it. I know I should do it. So just make the quick decision.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And
the more you think about things, the greater the time of convincing yourself you actually don't have to.
Mm.
You know, when the alarm goes off, get up.
Mm.
Don't hit the snooze button. I mean, that's the first option, isn't it? That's the first bit of think time. Snooze button. Oh, I'll just lie here another 10 minutes. Oh, maybe I'll hit the snooze again. By that, it's 9:30, you've done nothing. So get up when the alarm goes off.
And just get moving. I think the cold water is a really good example because there is that moment, isn't there, where you've just got to decide it's now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're aware that, boy, I could be deliberating, the jury, the whole, the arguments for the pros and the cons, and you can do that dance for as long as you like. But I think that's great advice. And also knowing on that future state, isn't it? Making a deal with the future where you do the cold water and then you know that you're going to feel amazing for the rest of the day, which is great. I wanted to take you back into the boat, if that's okay. Obviously rowing in lots of different boats, lots of different competitions and 8s and 4s and pairs, and obviously the Oarsome Foursome. Do you know who came up with the nickname the Oarsome Foursome? And it's just such a part of Australian folklore now. Yeah,
well, I think it was a journalist called Bruce Eva who rode for the Geelong Advertiser, I think, at the time. Yep. And we just won something or other, and it was an awesome race, and he just put the two together. So that's where that came from. It wasn't any manufactured thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we got him to thank for it.
Yeah. And then, of course, you had the song that accompanied the fruit. I mean, you were everywhere for a while there in terms of the Australian cycling.
Superstar. Seriously. Every now and again, I'll be walking down the street, and it's not there's that guy that went to 6 Olympics. It's there's that bloke off the fruit ad.
I know. And it's such a good little ringer, that one. It just pops into my head even now, believe it or not.
Yes, for you.
So we're chatting with James Tomkins. We're talking about his time in the boat, and we've touched on it a little bit, obviously already, about talking about cohesion and these moments in training where you might take two amazing strokes, and that becomes this kind of utopia experience that motivates you and the other people in the crew. I mean, going back over your career, are there any sort of key moments that every now and again you might be, when you're not walking down the street and someone's recognizing you as the guy off the fruit ad? Are you thinking of any of these moments? Like what are some things you'll take away from your time in rowing?
Well, I don't think about it often, but every now and again you'll be reminded. Actually, one thing I do remember is that you only learn from poor performances.
Right.
If you're doing really well, you just keep doing that, and you just assume that that's the right way of doing things. If you have a poor performance, that's when you've really got to look at yourself and look at what you're actually doing and work out, is that the right way to do it? So the poor performances were actually the best bits because it drove all this other really good performance.
Mm.
But I mean, you don't remember who you sat next to in science at school, but you remember who you played footy with or rowed with or played netball with, or you had a really amazing tournament somewhere, or you played in an incredible orchestra and sat alongside someone or other. So you remember those unique shared experiences. And I think that's the beauty, again, coming back to rowing being a team sport. You actually share these experiences with other people. If you're, sometimes I feel for the individual athletes, they're the only person that knows what they've gone through, and they can't actually share that with other people. They're the only ones that actually know the real inner sanctum of what it was like to stand on that starting line. Whereas we can, we've got friends, they're still great friends that we talk about and share those experiences and relive those experiences and talk about them together. So I think it's those sorts of things. Couple of moments, we lost the head of the river by a foot.
Mm.
And my coach was Noel Donaldson, or our coach was Noel Donaldson, who was the coach who then became our coach in the Oarsome Foursome going forward. So, I had great coaches, but, I remember him devastated afterwards, lost by a foot. And we're in the minibus heading back to Melbourne, and he could see that I was super upset about it. He goes, "Listen, don't worry, you've got a hell of a lot more bigger races to win. This is just a little setback." So you're not going to everything's not going to go your way along the way. You can whinge and complain and carry on for as long as you like, or for a period of time, but at some point you've just got to get on with it and accept what you've got and keep moving forward.
I remember hearing Alyssa Camplin speak, she had a similar sentiment, which was, you get these challenges and you can either step up or you can step down. I mean, that's really at the end of the day, getting back to your comment earlier about making good decisions quickly. And I know sometimes you do need to, sort of unpack the meaning around that. And I guess as a young, as a schoolboy and missing out on something at the time that would have seemed so huge as the head of the river, and you'd spent a whole season, probably back then 3 or 4 months or so working on it, which would have seen an enormous amount of time. That there's something in that as well, and how you sort of hold the space around that, because for these kids that they can be really big events, and so much so that it's something that pops into your mind many years later.
Yeah, that's right, and that's why it's really important to have other stuff in your life.
Yeah,
so that your self-worth isn't just based around one thing.
Yeah,
your self-worth is actually the preparation to get you there, and working with other people and striving. There's that ancient famous poem about striving, and it's the person who steps up and puts themselves out there to have a go is in a far better position than the person sitting in the grandstand, commentating about them. The person out on the field putting themselves out there having a crack, that's the one that's doing the good stuff. Win, lose or draw.
Yeah.
But that notion of having a go. This may work, this may not work, but you know what? I'm going to have a go. And I think that's, in a really basic way, that's what's important. And when you do get a setback along the way, that's okay. That's normal. No one goes through whatever thing they're trying to achieve seamlessly. Everyone has setbacks, and it is normal. And as you said, it's how you respond to those. Do we have to tweak the training? Do we have to change the seating in the boat? Do we have to change our mindset? But you learn from it and you keep moving forward. I mean, one of the incredible experiences, which I actually do think about every now and again, was leading into 2000 Olympics. So Drew Ginn and I had won the World Championships the previous year by, 7 seconds. So Sydney Olympics was looking fantastic. And he developed a bit of a back injury, so we couldn't go through the normal selection trials. So the selectors said, listen, the crew that won all the trials will go to Europe, and we'll send you guys there as well. And there's a regatta 6 weeks before the Sydney Olympics. Whoever finishes ahead will go to the Olympics. Mm-hmm. So that is a pretty important regatta. Unfortunately, Drew's back was getting worse and worse, so much so that we were warming up for the heat of this regatta in Switzerland. And the first warm-up stroke that we did, he ruptured the 2 discs that were in trouble. He ruptured them in agony.
Yeah.
Like, this is a super important regatta. If we make the games, we're going to win. Absolute agony. The medical boat came out, got him, and our reserve jumped in the boat, Matt Long, who rowed on the same side as me. So rowing, I've got more out one side and my partner's got the oar out the other side. So unfortunately, Longy, the reserve, he rowed with it. So in 15 minutes, he had to learn how to row on the other side, and somehow we had to get down the course. And the goal was to finish the heat so that we would actually qualify for the repechage and be able to stay in the regatta. And so we did that, and we actually won the heat. But then, afterwards, like, I was a mess. Here is the regatta that's going to determine whether you go to Sydney Olympics. In tears, complaining, whinging, blaming, a lot of crying. I'd ring my wife. I'm like a mid-30s. So like a full adult, and ring my wife. I'm in tears for 10 minutes, not saying a word. And that was a great chat. Thanks. I needed that. And then you go to see the sports psychologist. But this just a mess. But then you need to go through that process. You can't just go bang, oh, that's bad, I've got to move on.
Yeah.
You got to go through that process of that sort of grieving process of whinging, complaining and blaming. I mean, that's normal. But then you get to the point, right, we've got to keep going forward here. And super proud that with Longy, we got into the semi-final, we won the semi-final, we won the whole bloody regatta. and which was extraordinary. And then got a bronze medal in Sydney on about 6 weeks preparation. So, and that was purely around how can I row to allow Longy to get as much out of himself as he's still trying to learn to row on the. It's like trying to write left-handed. You can do it. It's not fantastic, but we've got to try and maximise that as much as possible.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary story, and I, one of the things in thinking about talking with you today. And the relatively limited knowledge I have of rowing, you would have seen, and for those of our listeners who don't know much about the sport, I mean, it's an incredibly tough sport. People are right on the line in terms of their physical capability, their mental capability, everything. It's really a sport, isn't it, where you're getting feedback on your power, on your stroke, on, it's very visible. It's like chess in the sense of a chess. You can see everybody's moves. You can see absolutely everything in rowing. There's nowhere to hide. You're always, you're always being evaluated, and, there's a huge amount of accountability. I guess in your time in rowing, there would have been a real shift in how we understand mental health, and the story that you just shared, I think, is a beautiful illustration of that. But what are your thoughts around, mental health and high performance? And maybe if you've been able to share about a little bit about your stories around, well-being and how you kind of think about that now, that balance that we strike between, pushing ourselves to actually really achieve goals that require sacrifices, personal and otherwise, versus actually, sometimes we do just need to be able to be effective. We actually do need to be able to, decompress and be aware of, our experiences as well.
Yeah, well, it's certainly extremely important, and I don't profess to be an expert in any way, shape or form. And maybe I was from, I guess I'm sort of like from the harden up school, just get on with it. But having said that, that's what I think. But then when I think about all of the experiences that I've had where the honesty and the open discussions that we would have about how we were feeling, when you do that, it makes it so much easier for me. Can you keep doing that, please? Or can you stop doing that? The really, and sometimes it'd be pretty raw discussions, but that really open, honest, respectful discussions were really important, extremely important. And I think was treating mental health or making sure that those conversations were happening. So, when I say I'm from sort of old school harden up, but then when I really think about what we actually went through, we're probably practicing a lot of these things along the way. So I think those discussions are really, really important. Yeah, as you said, the sport is incredibly hard. The last stroke you take should be the last one you can possibly take. So you're asking so much of yourself physically, which requires a huge amount emotionally to get that out of you. So you need to be in a really good state of equal respect amongst the group. And there's no one, above or below anyone else. You're all in this together, and you've all shared this together, and you're all open and honest enough with one another together. But I think it sort of circumvents them, or it can certainly help building much better mental health and strength. So I think that's really important. The other aspect is that, and we touched on it earlier, that you don't base your self-worth purely on a rowing race. There's so many other things involved, and that's why balance in life is really important. Having other things in life is super, super important. I mean, that's why I went and rowed for as long as I did. Family, kids, work, and sport. So, that was enough. It's not all in balance, mind you. There's, obviously at different times there's different levels. But having different things in your life is really important. So if one's not going quite as well as it should be, you've got other things to fall back on, and that are still giving you that self-worth. Having been to 6 Olympics, I didn't know much about the history of the games in antiquity 2,500 years ago, and I did a tour. If anyone gets a chance and they're travelling in Greece, go to Olympia, the birthplace of the games, a couple of thousand years ago. It's incredible. Anyway, they tell the story that the Greeks back then, when you died, to ascend to the gods, to go to heaven, you had to have lived a balanced life of mind, body, and soul. So academics for the mind, arts for the soul, and athletics for the body. And if you had all of that balance, then you're in a position to ascend to the gods, to go to heaven. And it's balance in life, mind, body, and soul. Some academics, some learn to get the guitar and be active. And if you've got all those three things in your life, then you're a pretty well-rounded person, and you've got that balance in life. And so you're not hanging your hat on one particular thing to work out. It's just diversification.
Mm. I think the other thing that came through, so balance obviously is coming through strongly in this conversation. I think the other thing that came through just on the well-being side of it was just about, again, being who you are and being open to dialogue, and how you sort of set up those kinds of conversations that, I guess, do two things. One, they're truthful, they're real, and they also provide, I guess, in a sense, from what you said, like a supportive environment where you can, share and exchange ideas with around a shared and common goal, and also a shared and common challenge, and how hard that is for people to be able to experience, particularly, like you say, I mean, just thinking about what you said, the last stroke that you take should be the last one that you're actually physically capable of taking. It doesn't leave a lot of room in the bank for much.
No, it gets close. I've nearly stopped. Yeah. I nearly stopped once in an Olympic final too.
Yeah, wow.
Got right on the edge.
Yeah, I suppose you need a very good coxswain to tell you how far away you are from the line.
We're in a coxswain spot. We didn't have a coxswain. My partner, Drew, he was talking me through it. Like right. he realised that he was just saying, just breathe, relax.
Yeah, okay.
But I mean, we were, Ray, we'd be rowing along, and if I stuffed up a stroke, straight away I just turn around and apologise.
Yeah.
That was me. My bad. So just being so honest, it's like, I completely stuffed that up, but acknowledging it, moving forward. And, the feedback loops are super critical. So after each session, just a couple of minutes, what the individual was working on, and then what the crew was working on. And often it'd be like, I still can't get that front turn. Like, it'll be week after week after week. I still haven't got it. And the other guys, what can we do to help you? So there's that incredible honesty and openness that I'm still failing at what I'm trying to do. And then the other guys saying, well, how can we help? And that's a really safe environment, not to coin a phrase, but it's a really nice environment to be in, where you can be so open, so honest, and open yourself up. But you've got a bunch of people trying to help you fix that, trying to help you be better.
You're talking earlier about balance and, the home life and, James, we've heard a lot about the athlete and around goals and having other projects and obviously also, having a rich and supportive family life. What's being a dad taught you?
It's taught me a lot of things. I've got 3 daughters and it's taught me a lot. I love it. Absolutely love it. It's I love going to watch them perform or do sport or whatever it is. It's actually what it has taught me is that a lot of those things that we've talked about are important, for kids to create that environment where they can, if they're struggling with something, they can be honest and open enough to ask for help or talk about it. And the rest of us can go, okay, well, how do we help? And to have that sort of, that environment where any of us aren't afraid to say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Does anyone have any idea how to do simultaneous equations or whatever it is? Can someone help me? It might be as basic as maths, or it might be something bigger than that. You want an environment where people aren't afraid to cry for help. Ray, the other thing I've learned is that it's okay to say no.
Good advice.
As any parents out there, you can use full stops. Don't do that, full stop. Not a comma. Don't do that comma because this, this, and this. No, just don't do that. Stop. It's like, don't be afraid of the full stop.
Yeah, nice.
That's the other thing I've learned.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, great advice and very well put. So we have two questions that we ask everyone on the podcast, and I'll ask those to you now. So the first one is, if you had a story that you could tell a 14-year-old and he'd listen, what would the story be?
I think the story would be around the notion of not being afraid of failure. If you don't try, you're not going to win or fail. You're not going to do anything. But if you try, you're going to succeed no matter what. You might actually do really, really well. You may not, but you're going to succeed because you actually put yourself out there and had a go. And that's what being alive is. It's having a go, putting yourself out there, trying new things, trying different things. I get super frustrated with some of my girls' friends, when there's what the schools are like nowadays. Their school camps are unbelievable. And, I don't want to go camping in Central Australia. What? Well, you're never going to get this chance again, for Christ's sake. Have a go. You've got this incredible opportunity, all of these incredible opportunities in front of you. My story would be, have a go, make the most of every single opportunity you've got. And if you do that, it'll be a fantastic life. That's not really a story, Ray. Sorry, mate.
No, it's advice. No, it's fine. No, people answer it in different ways, and I think, the story is also your story. I think that, we ask people about, what would a story be? I think we've been hearing all of your stories, about stepping into life, about having the courage to do something different, but to be active and to make good decisions and make them, in a way that, enables you to step into new opportunities.
It's so easy to hit the snooze button. It's so easy to say no. Say yes and then work out how to do it after.
What about people who have multiple alarms? I think I saw a meme. Like 601, 602, 603.
They got issues.
They've already done the thinking. They've already done the deferring. And so my final question for today, and again, thank you so much for your time, has been, what is it to be a good man these days?
I think, to be a good man is just to be respectful of everyone and of yourself, and be proud. And, don't be afraid of having a go. And that might be stepping in when you need to step in to stop something happening. So, along those lines, I think, I guess all the stuff that we've talked about of being understanding of others, that not everyone is perfect. Not everyone is the same as you. Everyone is different. People approach things differently. And even, in the sporting context, people approach a goal completely differently. Some are super competitive, some want to sneak up on it, that sort of stuff. But understand that we're all different. Be brave enough to accept that, and that your way isn't the right way. And be man enough to understand that.
I like that expression. Some people want to be bold with their goals and some want to sneak up on them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had that, so Mike Mackay, one of the greatest competitors you'll ever come across, fantastic guy to be in a boat with, but honestly, could be a pain in the neck when it came to training, because every single weight session, you name it, was a competition. He used to drive some of us up the wall. But that worked for him perfectly.
Yeah.
And we had to understand that, accept that was great for him, but he had to also understand that I approached it a little bit differently. But once we got that and understood that there's different ways of approaching things and respecting each other's approach, then it was onward and upward.
So on that note, James, thank you very much from all of us at Understanding Boys, the stories that you've shared, I think the way in which you have lived such a rich and fulfilling life and been such an inspiration to so many of us. It's just so great to hear your thoughts today. We wish you very well in the next little while and getting out of lockdown and continuing to challenge yourself. No doubt you'll be taking up, I think you said German, and then maybe some sort of musical instrument in the near future.
Yeah, maybe. Hey, it's a pleasure, Ray. It was really good chatting.
We hope you've enjoyed this Understanding Boys podcast. Make sure you subscribe on your podcast app, and please leave us a review to help grow the community. For more information about the podcast, please visit understandingboys.com.au. Until next time, thanks for listening.